The signal came through during a routine maintenance check, buried beneath layers of cosmic radiation and stellar interference. Diana Okoye had been reviewing supply manifests in her quarters when Roy Fisher's voice crackled through the ship-wide system, tight with barely contained excitement. She arrived at the communications bay to find half her senior staff already crowded around the main console, their faces illuminated by the pulsing waveform display. "It's a distress call," Roy said without preamble, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. 3 months old, maybe 4. The translation algorithm is still working on it, but the emotional markers are unmistakable. Diana leaned closer, watching alien syllables scroll across the screen as the ship's artificial intelligence attempted to parse meaning from the unknown language. The Perseverance had been charting unexplored star systems for 8 months now, cataloging planets and asteroid fields with the methodical patience that deep space required. Finding signs of intelligent life, let alone a cry for help, changed everything. Petra Lindholm, the ship's xenobiologist, pulled up a spectral analysis on a secondary screen. The linguistic structure suggests a species with complex social hierarchies, multiple voices in the recording, all speaking in unison. It's almost like singing. "Can we get a translation?" Diana asked. The AI chimed softly, and text began appearing beneath the alien audio. The words were halting, assembled from context and mathematical probability, but their meaning struck like a physical blow. "Our world burns. They came from the darkness between stars. We are farmers, artists, singers of the great harmony. We do not know war. We do not know how to fight. 17 colonies have fallen silent. We sent messages to the Council of Galactics. They said we were not their concern. If anyone hears this, if anyone can help, please, we are dying, our children are dying, we call ourselves Kalani. Our world is tender garden, please." Silence filled the communications bay. Diana felt something cold settle in her chest. She had spent 20 years in the Earth Defense Force before joining the Exploration Corps, had seen humanity claw its way from a divided planet to a unified spacefaring civilization. She knew what desperation sounded like, regardless of the language. "Play it again," she said quietly. They listened 3 more times. With each repetition, the translation algorithm refined its interpretation, filling in gaps and correcting errors. The plea remained unchanged. A peaceful species under attack, abandoned by the very galactic community that was supposed to protect them. Hassan al-Mansour, the chief engineer, broke the silence. "The signal origin point is 42 light-years from our current position, 12 days at maximum jump speed, assuming we don't burn out the FTL drives. We should contact Earth Command," Roy said, ever the cautious one. "Get authorization before we go charging into an unknown situation." Diana nodded, but her mind was already working through the logistics. 12 days of travel plus 3 months since the signal was sent. Whatever was happening to the Quilani was either over by now or still ongoing. She initiated a quantum relay connection to Earth, knowing it would take hours to establish a real-time link across such vast distances. While they waited, Petra compiled everything the galactic database contained about the Quilani. It wasn't much. They had joined the Galactic Council 80 years ago, a species known for their agricultural innovations and artistic achievements. Their homeworld, designated as Garden Class for its stable climate and abundant resources, orbited a yellow sun similar to Earth's own. There were no military records, no defense forces listed in their civilization profile. The entry noted them as a passive tier culture, unsuited for Security Council positions or defense agreements. "What about these attackers?" Diana asked. "Do we have anything on them?" Petra's expression darkened. "The Ravagers, nomadic raiders, no fixed homeworld. They've been flagged by the Council multiple times, but there's no enforcement mechanism. They move between sectors, overwhelming primitive or peaceful civilizations, stripping resources and enslaving populations. 17 documented attacks in the past 2 years. And the Council does nothing?" "Non-intervention policy," Petra said, her voice bitter. "Unless a Council member world is directly threatened, they won't commit military resources. It's supposedly to prevent endless territorial wars, but in practice, In practice, it's open season on anyone who can't defend themselves, Diana finished. The quantum relay finally connected and Diana found herself facing Admiral Wright, her former commanding officer and current head of Earth's deep space operations. She briefed him quickly, playing the translated distress call and sharing Petra's research. Wright listened without interruption, his weathered face unreadable. When Diana finished, he leaned back in his chair, the transmission lag making the pause feel eternal. "The Council isn't going to like this," he said finally. "We're still new members, still proving ourselves. If you intervene without authorization, you could create a diplomatic incident. And if we don't?" Diana challenged. "We're talking about genocide, sir. A peaceful species being wiped out while the galaxy watches." Wright studied her through the screen, and Diana saw the moment he made his decision. It was the same look he'd worn during the Mars Rebellion, when he'd chosen to support civilian evacuations against direct orders. "The Perseverance is an exploration vessel operating at the edge of charted space," he said carefully. "You have wide latitude in responding to emergency situations. I'm granting you discretionary authority to investigate and render assistance as you see fit. But Diana, understand this. If things go bad, we can't send a fleet to pull you out. You'll be on your own." "Understood, sir." "And Diana? The Council will call this a violation of protocol. Earth will defend your actions, but there will be consequences." "Some things are more important than protocol," Diana said. After the connection terminated, she turned to face her assembled senior staff. Beyond them, through the communications, bay windows, stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Humanity had reached for those stars for generations, driven by curiosity and hope, and the fundamental belief that they could be better than their bloody history suggested. "I won't order anyone to follow me on this," Diana said. "The Quilani aren't our people. Their fight isn't our fight. Anyone who wants to be reassigned to another vessel at the nearest starbase, no questions asked, no marks on their record. I'll understand." Roy met her eyes. "With respect, Captain, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said." He turned to the navigation console. "Plotting jump coordinates for Tender Garden now. We can be there in 12 days if we push the engines." Hassan was already at his workstation. "I'll reinforce the FTL drive couplings. We're going to need every bit of speed we can manage." Petra simply nodded, her jaw set with determination. Diana allowed herself a small smile. "Then let's go find out if we can still make a difference. Engage FTL drives on Roy's mark." The Perseverance hummed with building energy as its faster-than-light engines spun up. Diana stood at the observation window watching the stars begin to stretch and blur. Somewhere ahead, across 42 light-years of empty space, people were dying. People who had sent a message into the void, hoping someone would care enough to answer. The galaxy was about to learn what humans did when someone asked for help. Reality snapped back into focus as the Perseverance dropped from faster-than-light travel, and Diana felt her stomach lurch with the familiar disorientation of transition. The sensation passed quickly, but what appeared on the view screen made her wish for the comfortable emptiness of jump space. Tender Garden hung before them, a blue and green jewel that reminded Diana painfully of Earth. But the resemblance ended there. The orbital space around the planet was a graveyard. Twisted metal fragments tumbled slowly through the void, pieces of what had once been civilian transports and cargo vessels. Entire habitat rings designed to house thousands drifted in broken segments, their interiors exposed to vacuum. Some of the wreckage was still burning somehow, fire sustained by leaking oxygen or volatile chemicals. "Scan for survivors," Diana ordered, her voice steady despite the horror unfolding before her eyes. "Detecting multiple life signs on the surface," Roy reported, his hands moving rapidly across his console. "Population centers are under active assault. I'm reading 6 hostile vessels in low orbit, and dozens of smaller craft conducting atmospheric operations." Diana moved closer to the tactical display, watching red markers swarm across the planet's surface. "Show me the enemy ships." The view screen shifted, magnifying one of the orbital vessels. It was unlike anything in the standard galactic database. Organic curves blended with mechanical components as if the ship had been grown rather than built. Ribbed sections pulsed with bioluminescent light, and weapon ports opened like mouths lined with metallic teeth. The entire structure seemed alive, predatory. "Those are Ravager vessels," Petra said, her voice tight. "I've seen pictures but never imagined they'd be so large." Hassan pulled up engineering specifications on his screen, comparing the Ravager ships to their own. Each one mounts weapons equivalent to a council cruiser, and their armor is some kind of regenerating biological composite. "We're outgunned by a factor of 6 to 1, and that's not counting their fighter craft." "What about the planet's defenses?" Diana asked. Roy shook his head. "Minimal. Orbital platforms designed for asteroid deflection, not military engagement. Most have already been destroyed." "Captain, the Quilani never stood a chance." Diana felt anger burning in her chest, hot and fierce.
"Hail them!"
"The Quilani government, whatever's left of it." Minutes passed while the communication array cycled through frequencies, searching for an active receiver. Finally, a connection established, and the view screen filled with an alien face. Diana had seen images of the Quilani in the database, but nothing prepared her for meeting one in real time. Tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer with subtle rainbow hues, the alien's large eyes held depths of emotion that transcended species boundaries. Those eyes were filled with tears. "I am lead singer Melodious Dawn," the alien said, the translation software rendering the musical tones into comprehensible speech. "You are the humans. The Deathworlders. You came." The word sent a ripple through the bridge crew. Deathworlders. Earth had earned that classification from the Galactic Council based on its environmental hazards. High gravity, violent weather, aggressive predators, and countless microorganisms that considered everything potential prey. Most Council species found Earth terrifying. Humans had evolved to consider it home. "We received your distress call," Diana said. "We're here to help." "What's your current situation?" Melodious Dawn's expression shifted, and Diana realized she was seeing something like Hope War with despair. "The Ravagers came 4 months ago. They demanded surrender, demanded we submit to harvesting. We offered them resources, technology, anything we could spare. They killed our diplomatic envoy and broadcast their deaths across all our worlds. Since then, they have been systematically destroying our cities, taking our people. We tried to fight, but we are farmers and artists, not warriors. We have no weapons, no training. We called the Council. They said we were a passive tier civilization, not worth the risk of intervention." "How many Quilani remain?" Petra asked gently. 2 billion on the homeworld. Perhaps 500 million in the outer colonies if they still survive. We numbered 6 billion before the Ravagers came. Melodious Dawn's voice broke. "I have watched my people burn. I have heard the screams of children, and there is nothing I can do." Diana made her decision. "Can you send us detailed scans of their landing zones and troop positions?" "You will help us?" Melodious Dawn's eyes widened. "But you are one ship." The Council said. "The Council isn't here," Diana interrupted. "We are. Send us everything you have. Troop positions, city layouts, population centers that still need evacuation. We're going to buy you time." After Melodious Dawn transmitted the data, Roy turned to Diana with barely concealed alarm. "Captain, we need to talk about the tactical situation. 6 warships, thousands of ground forces, and we're a single exploration vessel with defensive weapons. This isn't a fight we can win." "Then we change what winning looks like," Diana said. "Hassan, how fast can you retrofit our fabrication systems to produce combat drones?" The engineer's eyes lit up with understanding. 48 hours if I push the manufacturing cells to maximum capacity. They won't be fancy, but they'll carry weapons and follow basic commands. Do it. Roy, I need guerrilla tactics. Ambush points, hit-and-run strategies, anything that leverages our mobility against their numbers. Petra, coordinate with the Quilani. Find out what resources they have that we can use. What about the Ravagers? Roy asked. They're going to respond when we start interfering. Diana smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Good, let them respond. Let them come for us instead of defenseless civilians. She opened a communication channel, this time directing it toward the Ravager fleet. This is Captain Diana Okoye of the Earth vessel Perseverance. Tender Garden is now under human protection. You have one chance to withdraw peacefully. The response came quickly, a harsh voice filled with clicking sounds and guttural tones. Humans, we know of your kind. Violent apes from a poisonous world, playing at civilization. Your council fears you, tolerates you only because you might be useful. But you are far from home, little Deathworlder. This prey belongs to us, last chance, Diana said calmly. Laughter cruel and rasping. You amuse us. We will enjoy consuming your world when we finish here. Watch as we destroy. Diana, cut the channel. Roy, take us into the orbital debris field. Hassan, transfer all non-essential power to shields and forward weapons. Petra, make sure the Quilani know to stay clear of our operational zone. The Perseverance began moving, diving toward the planet with controlled precision. Alarms wailed as Ravager vessels adjusted their positions, targeting solutions painting themselves across tactical screens. Diana gripped the armrest of her command chair, her mind running through possibilities and probabilities. 3 Ravager vessels breaking orbit to intercept, Roy announced. 2 more holding position. The last one is continuing ground operations. Perfect. They're splitting their forces. Diana leaned forward. Bring us through that satellite debris. Use the fragments for cover. What followed was a deadly dance through the orbital space. The Perseverance wove between chunks of destroyed Quilani infrastructure, using the debris field's density to break targeting locks. Ravager plasma bolts seared past, vaporizing metal fragments into glowing clouds. Diana's ship returned fire, targeting solutions calculated and executed with machine precision. Direct hit on target 1, Roy called out. Their regeneration is slower than expected. Biological systems need time to heal. Then we don't give them time, Diana said. Hassan, all power to forward cannons. 1 clean shot through their command section. The Perseverance emerged from the debris field at full acceleration, weapons charging. The lead Ravager vessel tried to compensate, but it was too slow. Human weapons designed for maximum kinetic impact tore through the organic armor plating. The enemy ship shuddered, bioluminescent lights flickering and dying. Atmosphere vented from ruptured sections, and the vessel began a slow tumble toward the planet's atmosphere. Target destroyed, Roy confirmed, then immediately added, but we've taken damage. Forward shields down to 30% and hull breaches on deck 7 and 8. Seal those sections. Keep us moving. Diana watched as the remaining Ravagers adjusted their approach, more cautious now. They're learning we're not easy prey. Another message came through from Melodious Dawn. Human ship, you destroyed one of their vessels. No one has ever destroyed a Ravager warship before. Our people are watching. They have hope again. Diana allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before reality reasserted itself. 1 ship destroyed, 5 remaining, and the Perseverance was already damaged. The real battle was just beginning. Contact Earth Command, she ordered. Tell them we need reinforcements. And send a message to the Kalani government. Tell them to start evacuating non-combatants to the southern continent. We're going to teach their attackers why Earth is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. Through the view screen, Tendergarden turned slowly, beautiful and burning. Somewhere on that world, people who had never known war were learning to fight for survival. And above them, humans who had survived countless wars were teaching the galaxy a simple lesson. When someone asked for help, you answered. No matter the cost. Amara Okonkwo had 19 minutes to prepare for the worst day of her life. She spent the first 3 checking her medical supplies, the next 6 reviewing Quilani physiology from the database Petra had compiled, and the remaining 10 staring at her hands, watching them shake. First combat drop, Ivan Volkov asked from across the shuttle bay, his voice carrying the rough accent of someone who had grown up in the Siberian colonies. The big man was methodically checking his heavy weapons, movements practiced and calm. Second, Amara replied, forcing steadiness into her voice. First was the Mars Rebellion. Mostly treated injuries after the fighting ended. This will be different, Yvonne said, not unkindly. The Ravagers don't take prisoners, don't show mercy. You see someone go down, you stabilize and move. No heroes, just survival. Amara nodded, swallowing hard. Around them, 48 other Marines prepared equipment and checked weapons. Diana had divided the Perseverance's security forces into strike teams, each tasked with defending a different Kilani city. Amara's team drew Harmony's Reach, the capital, where Ravager forces were conducting systematic elimination operations. The shuttle lurched as it detached from the Perseverance, and Amara felt her stomach drop. Through the viewport, she watched the ship recede, still exchanging fire with Ravager vessels in high orbit. Hassan's combat drones swarmed around it like mechanical bees, their simple programming making them effective shields against incoming fire. 60 seconds to atmosphere, the pilot announced. Wei Chen, the demolition specialist, caught Amara's eye and grinned. The young woman barely looked old enough to be in the military, but her personnel file listed 3 tours in asteroid mining operations, diffusing unexploded ordnance. Hey Doc, when this is over, remind me to show you my collection of Ravager teeth. I hear they make excellent necklaces. You're insane, Amara said, but found herself smiling despite everything. The shuttle hit atmosphere hard, shuddering as thermal shields absorbed the friction heat. Warning alarms sang out, then quieted as they passed through the worst of it. Below, Harmony's reach appeared through breaking clouds. The city was beautiful, built with flowing organic architecture that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being imposed upon it. Towers spiraled upward like flower stems, connected by bridges that looked like leaves frozen in crystal. It was also burning. Ravagers concentrated in the central district, the pilot said, setting down on the northern platform. You'll have to fight your way to the main population center. The shuttle's doors blew open before they fully landed, Marines pouring out with practiced efficiency. Amara followed, medical pack bouncing against her back, and got her first look at the enemy. Ravagers stood nearly 3 meters tall, hunched forward on powerful legs. Their bodies were covered in segmented armor plating, dark chitin that seemed to absorb light. Multiple arms ending in clawed appendages wielded weapons that were part biological, part mechanical, but it was their faces that struck Amara with visceral horror. Multiple eyes arranged around a central mouth filled with rows of serrated teeth. They looked hungry. Contact! Ivan roared, his heavy weapon opening up with a sound like thunder. The firefight erupted with sudden violence. Ravagers charged the human position, moving faster than creatures their size should be able to move. Human weapons barked in controlled bursts, decades of military doctrine translated into devastating effectiveness. Ravagers fell, but more kept coming, driven by some alien imperative that knew nothing of fear. Amara found herself moving on instinct, training overriding terror. A Marine to her left took a plasma bolt to the shoulder and went down screaming. She was there in seconds. Medical scanner already analyzing the damage. 3rd-degree burns, muscle tissue crystallized by extreme heat, the kind of wound that would kill most species within minutes. Stay with me, she told the Marine, injecting broad-spectrum pain suppressors and synthetic blood replacement. The soldier's screams faded to gasps. You're not dying today. I won't let you. The wound sealed under her treatment, military-grade medical technology performing miracles that would have seemed like magic a century ago. The Marine struggled to his feet, weapon still clutched in his good hand. Thanks, Doc. Fall back to secondary position, she ordered. You're no good to anyone if you push too hard. But the Marine shook his head, already moving back into formation. Amara wanted to argue, wanted to order him to safety, but there was no safety here. Only the fight. The human forces pushed forward meter by meter, street by street. They found Kalani huddled in basements and underground shelters, families clinging to each other with expressions of absolute terror. Some of the aliens tried to speak, tried to thank their rescuers, but the battle's chaos made conversation impossible. Marines simply pointed toward evacuation routes and kept moving. Building ahead, Wei called out, pointing to a structure that seemed to pulse with bioluminescent light. That's a Ravager forward base. They're coordinating attacks from there. Ivan grinned, an expression that made him look slightly mad. Then we blow it up. What followed was brutal close-quarters combat. Humans moved through the building with tactical precision, clearing rooms and corridors with the grim efficiency of predators who had evolved fighting each other. Ravagers fought back with savage intensity, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Humans took wounds that should have been fatal and kept fighting. They covered each other with practiced coordination, turned every corner into a death trap for their enemies. Amara found herself treating wounds while under fire, stabilizing injured Marines even as plasma bolts seared past. She took a grazing hit to her arm, felt pain bloom hot and immediate, but pushed through it. There would be time for pain later. Right now, people needed her. Wei planted charges throughout the building's support structure, moving with the casual confidence of someone defusing bombs rather than setting them. 30 seconds after I trigger this, the whole thing comes down. Suggest we not be inside when that happens. They withdrew in good order, human discipline holding against the urge to simply run. Behind them, Ravagers realized too late what was happening. The charges detonated with sequential precision, and the building collapsed inward on itself, taking dozens of enemies with it. That's for the Kalani children, Wei said quietly, watching the dust rise. The day stretched into night and the night into another day. Amara lost count of the wounds she treated, the lives she saved. Her medical supplies dwindled to almost nothing, forcing her to improvise with Quilani medical technology and raw determination. She saw Marines fall, saw brave soldiers die protecting people they had never met, and each death carved something from her soul. But she also saw Quilani find their courage. Civilians who had never held weapons picked up fallen Ravager guns, learning through necessity how to fight back. They were clumsy, frightened, but they fought anyway. Melodious Dawn herself appeared on the second day, coordinating evacuation efforts with quiet dignity even as battles raged around her. "Why do you do this?" the Quilani leader asked Amara during a brief lull in the fighting. "Why sacrifice yourselves for strangers?" Amara looked at her blood-stained hands, at the wounded Marines resting against rubble, at the Quilani children being led to safety by their parents. "Because someone has to," she said simply. "Because it's right. Because if we don't stand up when evil comes, then what's the point of being human?" Melodious Dawn reached out, touched Amara's cheek with gentle fingers. "You are warriors, yes. But you are warriors who weep for those you cannot save. That is what makes you different from the Ravagers. That is what makes you beautiful." By the time reinforcements arrived from the Perseverance, the tide had turned. The Ravagers, confused and bloodied by resistance they never anticipated, began withdrawing from Harmony's reach. Yvonne's team had accounted for over 200 enemy kills. We had destroyed 3 Ravager forward positions, and Amara had treated over 80 wounded, losing only 3 patients despite impossible conditions. Diana arrived with the second wave, surveying the damage with grim satisfaction. "The orbital battle is ours. 2 more Ravager vessels destroyed, the others retreating. We've bought time for the Quilani to evacuate and regroup." "At what cost?" Amara asked, looking at the 17 body bags lined up in neat rows. 17 humans dead, Diana said quietly, but 2 million Quilani saved. 17 lives given so millions could live. They made that trade willingly, knowing what it meant. Melodious Dawn approached, her shimmering skin dulled by exhaustion and grief. She knelt beside the body bags, touching each one with reverent care. "In our culture, tears are sacred. We cry for those we have lost, and the tears carry their memory into eternity." She looked up at Diana, at Amara, at all the humans who had fought and bled and died. "I cry for your fallen. They are strangers no more. They are ours now, as we are yours." Above them, the stars slowly appeared as Tendergarden sunset. Somewhere in that vast darkness, the remaining Ravagers regrouped, sending messages to their fleet calling for revenge. But on the planet's surface, in the ruins of Harmony's Reach, humans and Quilani stood together. And that changed everything. Richard Stone hated politics. He had joined Earth's diplomatic corps because he believed in building bridges between species, finding common ground across the vast differences that separated civilizations. Instead, he spent most of his time navigating bureaucratic stupidity and cultural posturing that would have been ridiculous even by Earth's historically troubled standards. Today would be worse than usual. The Galactic Council chamber was designed to awe visitors, and Stone admitted it succeeded. The massive spherical room floated in the void between stars, held in position by gravity generators that represented the collective pinnacle of 100 species engineering knowledge. Each council member occupied a section of the sphere, arranged so that no species could claim prominence over another. Light filtered through the chamber in carefully calibrated wavelengths, ensuring every species present could see clearly despite the vast differences in their visual spectrums. Stone took his position in the human delegation section, flanked by 2 aides who looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. He didn't blame them. The emergency session had been called within hours of reports from Tendergarden reaching council space, and the mood was hostile. "The session is called to order," announced the speaker, a being whose species Stone couldn't properly pronounce. They looked vaguely insectoid, with crystalline wings that refracted light into rainbow patterns. "We address the matter of human intervention in Quilani territorial space, undertaken without council authorization." "Intervention is a generous word," came a voice from the Dravix delegation. The Dravix were reptilian, cold-blooded in temperament as well as physiology. The humans invaded a sovereign conflict zone and attacked the Ravagers without provocation or legal standing. Stone stood, activating his vocal transmitter. "With respect, Ambassador, the Ravagers were conducting systematic genocide against a council member species. The Quilani sent distress calls that were ignored. Human ships responded to a legitimate cry for help. The Quilani are passive-tier civilization, another voice interjected, this one belonging to the Nexari delegate. Council policy clearly states that member worlds are responsible for their own defense. Intervention in ongoing conflicts requires majority vote and approval from the Security Council. And how long does that approval process take? Stone challenged. Weeks, months? The Quilani would be extinct before the paperwork cleared. Protocol exists for a reason, the Nexari continued. If every species could unilaterally intervene in conflicts, the Council would collapse into chaos. The humans have been members for less than 5 years. They should be learning our systems, not breaking them. Stone felt his anger rising but forced it down. Losing his temper would only make things worse. Perhaps the humans are new, but we've seen this pattern before. On our own world, we watched as stronger powers stood by while weaker ones suffered. We swore we wouldn't repeat those mistakes. Noble sentiments, the Dravix ambassador said dryly. But nobility doesn't excuse lawbreaking. The Council has already drafted a resolution condemning human actions and proposing sanctions. Sanctions? One of Stone's aides looked stricken. Earth's economy depends on Council trade agreements. Before Stone could respond, a new voice cut through the debate. I would like to speak. The chamber fell silent. Melodious Dawn stood in the visitors' gallery, her presence commanding attention despite her species' physical fragility. She had arrived directly from Tendergarden, and her clothing still bore scorch marks from the fighting. Lead singer, the speaker acknowledged. You may address the council. Melodious Dawn moved to the chamber's center where speakers addressed the assembly. Her voice, translated through the chamber's systems, carried the musical quality of her native language. Honored delegates, I stand before you because humans gave their lives so that I might live. My people sent 17 distress calls to this council over 4 months. We begged for help as our worlds burned. We offered our resources, our technology, our eternal gratitude. You sent sympathies and regrets. The situation was complex, the Nexari delegate began, but Melodious Dawn continued as if she hadn't heard. I watched my children die. I heard their screams as ravagers tore through our cities. I held my mate as life drained from wounds we had no ability to treat because we are farmers, not warriors. And I asked myself, what is the purpose of this great council if it cannot protect those who need protection? The council cannot fight every species' battles, the Dravix ambassador said. We would be constantly at war. Then what good are you? Melodious Dawn's question hung in the air like an accusation. Humans arrived with one ship against an entire Ravager fleet. They fought not because we could offer them anything, not because they had obligation or treaty, but because we asked for help. They lost 17 soldiers. Each one volunteered knowing they might die. Each one fought so strangers might live. Can any delegation here claim such courage? Stone watched the chamber's reaction. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others maintained expressions of cool neutrality, but he saw cracks forming in the unified front against human intervention. The humans broke protocol, the speaker said carefully. This cannot be ignored. Then change your protocols, Melodious Dawn replied, because they are broken if they produce this result. A new voice entered the debate, this one belonging to the Vryn representative. The Vryn were logical to the point of coldness, their entire culture built around mathematical precision and calculated outcomes. I have analyzed the Tendergarden situation. Probability calculations indicate the Quilani faced a 97% chance of extinction within 6 months. Human intervention altered that probability to 12%. From a purely numerical standpoint, their actions saved approximately 400 million lives. Lives that weren't the Council's responsibility to save, the Nexari countered. Were they not? The Vryn's translated voice held something that might have been contempt. The Quilani are council members. They paid their dues, contributed their knowledge, participated in cultural exchanges. What is membership worth if it provides no protection? The debate raged for hours. Stone presented evidence of Ravager atrocities, documented cases of 17 species extinctions that the Council had observed without action. Melodious Dawn spoke with quiet dignity about watching her world die. The Vryn provided cold mathematical analyses of intervention costs versus humanitarian benefits. But it was a message from Diana, transmitted from the Perseverance, that changed everything. She had sent a recording, intercepted from Ravager communications. In it, Ravager commanders discussed their strategy openly. They specifically targeted passive-tier civilizations because Council policy made them easy prey. They used the non-intervention doctrine as a hunting guide. The Council has created a system where peaceful species are systematically eliminated, Stone said, playing the recording for the assembly. The Ravagers aren't just criminals, they're predators, and Council policy has made them more effective than they could ever be alone. Silence followed the recording. Even the most hardline delegates struggled to find counter-arguments. The humans present an interesting paradox, the Vryn representative said into that silence. They come from a world classified as Class 12 Deathworld. By all calculations, they should be the most dangerous species in the Council. Instead, they risked everything to save a species that could offer them nothing. Perhaps we have been measuring danger incorrectly. What do you propose? The speaker asked. I propose we acknowledge that our current system is flawed. I propose we recognize that the humans, despite breaking protocol, acted in accordance with higher principles. And I propose we form a new coalition, one dedicated to protecting species that cannot protect themselves. The debate shifted. Suddenly, delegates were discussing reform rather than punishment. 17 species, all of whom had faced Ravager attacks or similar threats, pledged support for the Vryn's proposal. They called it the Mutual Defense Coalition, an organization separate from the Council itself, but drawing from its membership. The humans started something today, the Vryn representative said, looking directly at Stone. They reminded us that power carries responsibility. Some of us forgot that lesson. Perhaps it took Deathworlders to teach it again. The sanctions were withdrawn, though a formal reprimand remained on record. Stone accepted it gracefully, knowing it was a political necessity that meant nothing in practice. Earth and 16 other worlds signed the coalition charter that same day. But as the session ended and delegates dispersed, Stone received a priority message from Earth Command. Long-range sensors had detected a massive energy signature moving toward Tendergarden. The Ravagers weren't retreating. They were regrouping, calling in reinforcements from across their territory. How many ships? Stone asked the communication officer. Initial estimate is 60 vessels, sir. Maybe more. They're bringing their entire regional fleet. Stone closed his eyes, feeling the weight of what was coming. The humans had won a battle, saved millions of lives, and sparked a political revolution. But the war was just beginning, and this time the enemy was coming with everything they had. He sent an encrypted message to Diana, knowing she would already be preparing. Reinforcements are coming from Earth. ETA is 36 hours. Hold until then. Diana's response was simple. We'll be here. However long it takes. Stone looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness between worlds. Somewhere in that darkness, humans and Quilani prepared for a siege that would determine not just the fate of one world, but the future of peaceful species throughout the galaxy. The Council had failed its test. Now humanity would face its own. Hassan al-Mansur had 4 weeks to turn a garden world into a fortress. He spent the first week not sleeping, the second arguing with physics, and the third accepting that some miracles required breaking previously established rules of engineering. The fabrication facilities he had constructed in Harmony's Reach worked without rest, converting raw materials into weapons, defensive platforms, and automated systems. Quilani workers, learning quickly despite their cultural aversion to violence, operated the machinery with growing confidence. They sang while they worked, traditional harmonies adapted to incorporate the rhythm of industrial production. Hassan found it oddly beautiful, this blending of peaceful culture with necessary preparation. The orbital mines are in position, Roy reported, his image flickering on Hassan's portable screen. The tactical officer remained aboard the Perseverance, coordinating the fleet's defensive preparations. 63 autonomous platforms, each carrying enough firepower to damage a Ravager vessel. It's not enough. Nothing will be enough, Hassan replied, watching welding sparks cascade across the factory floor. But enough isn't the goal. The goal is making them pay for every meter they advance. 3 human warships had arrived from Earth, the Indomitable, the Resolution, and Defiant Hope. Each brought additional personnel, weapons, and the grim determination of soldiers who understood the stakes. Admiral Trevor Blake commanded the fleet now, a veteran of the Titan War who had seen the cost of orbital defense firsthand. Diana worked planetside, coordinating with Melodious Dawn to fortify population centers and establish evacuation routes. The two leaders had developed an unlikely friendship, bonded by shared responsibility and mutual respect. Hassan had watched them plan, watched Diana explain military strategy while Melodious Dawn translated it into terms her people could understand. "The Ravagers think we're prey," Diana had said during one planning session. "They've spent centuries overwhelming peaceful species. They've never faced anyone who fought back effectively. That's our advantage." "What advantage?" a Quilani military coordinator had asked. The species was forming their first true defense force, civilians learning to become soldiers out of desperate necessity. "They outnumber us 10-1. They're used to winning quickly," Diana replied. "They rely on overwhelming force and psychological terror. Every day we hold out, every Ravager ship we destroy undermines their entire strategy. We don't need to destroy them. We just need to make victory too expensive to be worth it." Now, with the Ravager fleet days away, Hassan worked to implement that strategy. He had designed adaptive weapons using Quilani sonic technology, creating devices that disrupted organic systems without causing permanent damage. The Quilani had requested this, unwilling to completely abandon their principles even in the face of extinction. Hassan admired that, even as he secretly built more lethal alternatives in case mercy became a luxury they couldn't afford. The Coalition sent ships. 15 vessels from various species arrived in groups of 2 or 3, each contributing unique technology to the defensive network. The Turians brought cloaking systems that bent light around objects, making mines and platforms nearly invisible. The Grent, massive silicon-based beings, helped construct fortifications using their natural ability to manipulate stone and metal at the molecular level. The Vryn provided computational support, running battle simulations at speeds that made human computers seem primitive. "It's still not enough," Roy repeated during a fleet-wide briefing. His tactical display showed the approaching Ravager force in brutal detail. 60 confirmed warships, likely more following behind. Even with Coalition support, we're outnumbered 3-1. If they all commit to a single assault, our defenses will break within hours. Admiral Blake studied the display with the expression of someone performing battlefield calculus. "Then we don't let them all attack at once. Hassan, can you trigger localized seismic events on Tendergarden?" "The planet is tectonically stable," Hassan said, pulling up geological surveys. "At least by galactic standards. By Earth standards, it's sitting on a dozen pressure points that could go critical with the right encouragement. And if we deliberately destabilize those points?" Hassan saw where the Admiral was going. "We turn the planet itself into a weapon, create zones too dangerous for the Ravagers to safely approach. It would cause massive environmental damage." Melodious Dawn, who had been listening silently, spoke up. "My world already burns. If we can weaponize that burning to save my people, do it. We will rebuild. We cannot rebuild from extinction." Over the next 3 weeks, Hassan's teams placed seismic charges along fault lines, set up atmospheric manipulation stations using Quilani weather control technology, and prepared to turn a gentle world into something that would make the Ravagers regret their arrival. It felt wrong, using a planet's natural processes as weapons. But Earth had taught humanity lessons about environmental warfare, and those lessons translated across star systems. The Quilani Defense Force trained under human instructors. They learned to fight in groups, to use cover, to retreat strategically rather than standing and dying heroically. Some took to it naturally, finding courage they hadn't known they possessed. Others struggled, their cultural programming warring against the violence required for survival. But they learned, because the alternative was death. Amara trained Quilani medics, teaching them triage procedures and emergency medicine. The species' natural empathy made them excellent healers once they overcame their revulsion at treating combat injuries. "You'll see things that will haunt you," Amara told a class of 30 Quilani medical students. "You'll lose patience despite your best efforts. But you'll save more lives than you lose. And that has to be enough." Ivan and Wei led combat training, teaching guerrilla tactics and urban warfare. The big Russian and the explosive happy demolitions expert made an unlikely teaching team, but their methods worked. Quilani who had never touched weapons learned to set ambushes, to move silently through their own cities, to turn familiar ground into death traps for invaders. "They're getting better," Wei reported after a training exercise where Quilani teams had successfully captured a simulated enemy position. "Still too hesitant, too worried about causing harm. But when they commit, they're effective." "Will they be ready?" Diana asked. Wei's expression turned serious. Nobody's ever ready for this, but they'll fight. That's all we can ask. The Ravager fleet arrived on a day that should have been peaceful. Long-range sensors detected them dropping from FTL at the system's edge, their massive biomechanical ships pulsing with malevolent light. They came in formation, a swarm that blotted out stars. Admiral Blake broadcast a message to the fleet, to every human, Quilani, and Coalition soldier waiting in orbit or on the planet's surface. This is it. The Ravagers think they can overwhelm us through numbers. They think we'll break because we're afraid. They're wrong. Yes, they outnumber us. Yes, some of us won't survive this. But we're standing between them and innocent people. We're the line. And that line doesn't break. Not today. Not ever. The Ravagers broadcasted their own message, the Hive leader's voice dripping with contempt. Deathworlders and prey fighting together. It makes no difference. Your little alliance will drown in the tide. We are infinite. We are inevitable. We are... Diana cut into the transmission. You talk too much. Come find out what happens when prey fights back. The Ravager fleet accelerated toward Tender Garden, and Hassan activated the first defensive system. Mines detonated in pre-planned sequences, creating chain reactions that caught Ravager vessels in overlapping blast zones. 3 ships died immediately, torn apart by concentrated firepower. The rest adapted, spreading their formation and deploying countermeasures. They're learning, Roy noted grimly. So are we, Hassan replied, triggering the second wave of defenses. The space around Tender Garden became a killing field. Human ships darted through the chaos using superior maneuverability to strike and retreat. Coalition vessels contributed their unique capabilities. Turian cloaking allowing devastating ambushes while Grent-designed platforms absorbed punishment that would destroy conventional defenses. The Quilani, operating refitted civilian vessels, flew with desperate courage, their ships loaded with Hassan's adaptive weapons. But the Ravagers kept coming. For every ship destroyed, 2 more pressed forward. They accepted losses that would break most militaries, driven by the Hive leader's will and centuries of successful conquest. They were predators who had never known defeat, and they fought with the confidence of inevitable victory. Admiral Blake's flagship, the Indomitable, took a direct hit that breached its primary reactor. The Admiral ordered evacuation but stayed on the bridge, manually piloting his dying ship toward the largest Ravager vessel. The collision destroyed both ships, a final act of defiance that killed thousands of enemies at the cost of 300 human lives. Admiral Blake is gone, Roy reported, his voice tight with grief and rage. Diana, you have fleet command. Diana watched the tactical display, watched the Ravagers break through the outer defensive perimeter, watched her forces die buying time for others to live. She had commanded in battle before, had made decisions that sent people to their deaths, but never on this scale, never with so much at stake. All forces, she broadcast, fall back to planetary defensive positions. Make them come to us. Make them pay for every meter. The Ravagers descended on Tender Garden like a plague, and the real battle began. The atmosphere of Tender Garden screamed as Ravager vessels tore through it, leaving contrails of fire across the sky. Diana watched from the command center in Harmony's reach, a fortified bunker deep beneath the city where Melodious Dawn coordinated civilian evacuations, while human and coalition forces prepared for the final stand. Protocol Deathworld. The contingency plan that Roy had hesitated to approve was brutally simple. If they couldn't stop the Ravagers in space, they would turn Tender Garden itself into a weapon. Hassan had spent weeks preparing for this moment, and now Diana gave the order that would transform a peaceful world into something resembling Earth at its most violent. Activate seismic charges along the primary fault lines, she ordered. Trigger atmospheric manipulation systems. Give them a taste of what a real death world feels like. Hassan worked his console with focused intensity, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. Charges firing in sequence. We're going to cause significant geological instability. How significant? Earthquakes measuring 7 to 9 on the Richter scale across 3 continents. Volcanic activity in previously dormant sites. Atmospheric storms enhanced by our weather manipulation. Tender Garden is about to experience the kind of day that Earth considers normal. The first tremors hit as Ravager landing craft descended toward population centers. Ground assault forces, expecting the same easy conquest they had achieved in their initial attack, found themselves navigating a landscape that actively tried to kill them. Fissures opened beneath their formations, swallowing entire units. Artificially enhanced storms lashed their positions with winds strong enough to ground their lighter aircraft. Ravagers are confused, Roy reported from his station. Their communications chatter indicates they've never encountered planetary defenses like this. They're trying to regroup. Don't let them, Diana said. Hit them while they're disoriented. Human and Quilani forces launched coordinated attacks from fortified positions, using the environmental chaos as cover. The Quilani fought with desperate courage, defending their homes with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. They had learned the lessons Diana's forces taught them, turning their intimate knowledge of the terrain into tactical advantage. Amara moved through the medical stations, treating wounded as fast as they arrived. The casualties were staggering, both human and Quilani, but she refused to slow down. Every life saved felt like a small victory against the overwhelming horror of the battle. When a young Kalani medic broke down, overwhelmed by the carnage, Amara held her until the shaking stopped. "I know," she said softly. "I know it feels impossible. But look around. See how many we've saved. Focus on that." Ivan and Wei led a strike team deep into Ravager-controlled territory, targeting their command structures with precision demolitions. The big Russian moved with surprising grace for his size, his heavy weapons cutting through enemy positions, while Wei's explosives collapsed buildings on top of Ravager fortifications. They took losses, soldiers falling to enemy fire, but they never stopped advancing. "Command center ahead," Wei reported, studying the tactical overlay. "Heavily defended. We'll need to get creative." "When are we not creative?" Ivan replied, already calculating approach angles. They fought their way inside, room by room, corridor by corridor. The Ravager commanders inside fought with savage desperation, realizing too late that they were trapped. We placed her final charges with practiced efficiency. Then the team withdrew as the structure collapsed inward, taking the enemy command staff with it. In orbit, the naval battle continued with brutal intensity. The Perseverance, battered and barely functional, still fought under Roy's command. Coalition vessels contributed their unique capabilities, but the Ravager numbers were overwhelming. For every enemy ship destroyed, more seemed to take its place. "We can't sustain this," Roy said during a brief communication with Diana. "We've lost 60% of our fleet strength. If they commit everything to one final push, we break." "Then we don't give them that chance," Diana replied. "Hassan, are the orbital platforms ready for protocol override?" "Ready," Hassan confirmed. "But Diana, you know what this means. The platforms will overload their reactors. Anyone piloting them manually won't survive." "I know." Diana opened a channel to all remaining defensive platforms. "This is a volunteer request only. I need pilots willing to manually control the orbital platforms through one final attack run. The automated systems have been compromised by Ravager countermeasures. Manual control will allow us to target their flagship, but the reactor overloads will be fatal." Silence followed her request, and Diana felt her heart sink. She couldn't order people on a suicide mission. But without taking out the Ravager flagship and its hive leader, the battle was lost. "I'll do it." The voice belonged to Lieutenant Sarah Kim, a pilot from the Resolution. "My ship's already critical. Might as well make it count." "I'm in," said another voice, then another. Within minutes, 12 pilots had volunteered, knowing they were choosing death but believing the cost was worthwhile. Diana felt tears on her face but kept her voice steady. "Thank you. All of you. The galaxy will remember what you did today." The 12 platforms, each now manually controlled by a volunteer pilot, accelerated toward the Ravager flagship. Enemy fire tore through their formations, destroying 3 platforms before they could reach optimal range. The remaining 9 pressed on, their pilots broadcasting final messages to loved ones to Earth, to the people they were dying to protect. Lieutenant Kim's voice came through clearly, calm despite what she was about to do. "Tell my family I love them. Tell them it mattered. Tell them we held the line." The platforms fired in unison, every weapon discharging simultaneously as their reactors began critical overload. The combined firepower punched through the flagship's regenerating armor, tearing into vital systems. The massive vessel shuddered, bioluminescent lights flickering as catastrophic failures cascaded through its organic structure. Inside that ship, Diana knew, the hive leader was dying. The Ravagers' coordination would collapse without their central intelligence. The platforms exploded, 9 small stars burning briefly against the darkness. 9 lives given so that millions might survive. Enemy flagship is destroyed, Roy reported, his voice breaking. The remaining Ravager forces are in disarray. They're fighting among themselves, different commanders trying to assert control. Diana, we did it. We actually did it. But Diana couldn't celebrate yet. The orbital battle might be won, but ground forces still fought across 3 continents. She coordinated the final push, human and Quilani forces pressing their advantage against an enemy that had lost its central direction. The Ravagers, bred for conquest under unified command, fractured into competing factions. Some fought to the death. Others attempted retreat, only to be caught by coalition forces. The battle lasted another 6 hours before the last Ravager position fell. When silence finally descended on Harmony's reach, it felt alien after days of constant warfare. Diana emerged from the command bunker to find the city in ruins, smoke rising from 1,000 fires, but the Quilani flag still flying above what remained of their government buildings. Melodious Dawn stood among the rubble, her shimmering skin dulled by exhaustion and grief. Around her, Quilani survivors emerged from shelters, looking at their destroyed city with expressions of profound loss tempered by relief at being alive. "We survived," the Quilani leader said softly. 40 million of my people died in this battle, but 600 million live because you came. Because you answered when we called." Diana thought of Admiral Blake, of Lieutenant Kim and the other volunteer pilots, of the 17 Marines who died in the first battle, and the thousands who followed. The human casualties numbered over 40,000 by preliminary counts. Coalition forces had lost half their ships and personnel. The price of victory was measured in mass graves and memorial services. "I'm sorry we couldn't save more," Diana said. "You saved everything that matters," Melodious Dawn replied. "You saved hope. You proved that mercy and strength can coexist, that warriors can fight for peace rather than conquest. My people will remember this. The galaxy will remember this." In the weeks that followed, the cleanup began. Quilani and humans worked side by side, clearing rubble and rebuilding what had been destroyed. The Mutual Defense Coalition, formed in the political aftermath of the initial intervention, proved its worth by sending humanitarian aid and reconstruction materials. 17 species contributed to the rebuilding, each offering their unique skills and technologies. The Galactic Council formally acknowledged the coalition's legitimacy and revised their non-intervention policies. It wasn't a perfect solution, wasn't everything the reformers wanted, but it was progress. Peaceful species across the galaxy learned they didn't have to face extinction alone anymore. Diana stood at the memorial site 5 years later, reading the names carved into black stone. 40,000 humans, 3 million coalition personnel, 40 million Quilani. The cost of choosing to help, the price of refusing to stand by while innocents died. Behind her, a new generation of Quilani children played in reconstructed parks, their laughter carrying on the wind. Roy, now an admiral commanding the coalition fleet, stood beside her. "Still think it was worth it?" Diana thought about the question, about the weight of command and the burden of loss. "Yes, every day, yes. Those children playing, they're alive because we answered the call. That has to mean something." "It means everything," said a familiar voice. Amara approached, older now but still carrying her medical kit. She worked at the Quilani Medical Academy, training the next generation of healers. "I was at the hospital today. Met a young Quilani doctor who was orphaned during the first Ravager attack. She saves lives every day. She exists because we chose to act." They stood together, 3 survivors bearing witness to the cost and meaning of their choices. Across the galaxy, other species watched and learned. The Ravagers, their forces shattered and their territory claimed by freed slaves, no longer terrorized the void. New alliances formed, based not on fear or convenience but on the revolutionary idea that different species could protect each other, could choose cooperation over competition. The communications array in Harmony's reach, rebuilt with human and Quilani cooperation, detected a distress signal that evening. A species called the Ventari, under attack by a different predatory civilization, calling desperately for help. The signal was weak, old, maybe too late to make a difference. Diana listened to the translation, heard the fear and desperation in alien voices, and made her decision in seconds. "Plot a course," she ordered. "Calculate jump coordinates. We're going to help." Roy smiled, the expression carrying echoes of old grief and new purpose. Coalition fleet is standing by. Shall I give the order to deploy? Give the order. Let them know help is coming. Diana looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness between worlds where cries for help echoed endlessly. But those cries no longer went unanswered. Humanity had learned what it meant to reach for the stars, and that lesson spread across civilizations. When someone asked for help, you answered, no matter the cost, no matter the distance, no matter the danger, because in the end, that's what separated civilization from barbarism, hope from despair, life from extinction. The fleet jumped to FTL, carrying humans and Krillani and a dozen other species toward another desperate world. The darkness between stars seemed less absolute now, illuminated by the simple truth that they were not alone. None of them were alone anymore. And that changed everything.